Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. Thank you for coming. We're happy to have you here. Um, Before I introduce our speakers, I'd just like to go over the setup. So if you have any trouble with Zoom, please feel free to use the chat feature. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. It's located at the bottom of your screen. This will help me better organize the questions, which we can answer throughout the presentation. Um, the other one is if you would like to raise your hand, that's another option. You can raise your hand to ask your question, and I will try to unmute you, and we can go from there. So without further ado, I'd like to present Basil Hewitt, our engineer in public information, and then Will Chen, our engineer in solid waste.
Thank you, Genesis, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a virtual tour of our food waste recycling program. Um, it's one of the programs we've had in operation for about 6 years, and we're really proud of it because it's consistent with our mission of converting waste into resources. And we're trying to make this as much an interactive tour as possible. So if you have questions as we go along, do as Genesis has instructed you. You can raise your hand. I think she wants them in the Q&A feature, and then we'll get to them if they're topical to what we're covering at that point or at the end. So with that, let's get going. Like I said, let's get going. So sanitation districts have been around since 1923. Our mission is to protect public health and the environment, and we do that by managing wastewater and solid waste. Today, we manage about 400 million gallons of wastewater every day. That's enough to fill the Rose Bowl 4 or 5 times a day. And we manage a fourth of LA County's trash. And when we were created, it was all about public health, boosting life expectancy. In the early 1920s, the typical life expectancy was about 50 years of age in LA County. Now, because of modern sanitation, it's 75, 85 years of age. It's gone up like 25 years. So we started in that capacity, but we've evolved over the years as public perceptions and demand has changed. So it's not just protecting public health and the environment. We're also now recycling water. We have over 950 sites in LA County that utilize our recycled water. We recycle materials from the solid waste, and we also generate green energy. And today we're going to focus on the generation of green energy, the latest arrow in our quiver in terms of what we can do in terms of green energy production. So let's back up a little bit. LA County generates 21 million tons of waste per year. As you see here, of that waste, about 9 million tons buried in landfills in LA County. And this is an aerial shot of one of our landfills, the Shoal Canyon landfill. And of that 9 million tons per year buried in landfill, a third of that waste, a third of that landfill waste is organic in nature, food waste, yard waste, and so on. And that food waste in LA County each day, that food waste equates to about minimum 4,000 tons of food waste each day is thrown out. And there's a shot at our Point of Hills material recovery facility, some of this food waste that we take into our facility. And this food waste, if it's disposed in landfill, can release methane into the environment. And one of the things that people don't realize, food waste, methane is a greenhouse gas. It's 23 times more disruptive than carbon dioxide. And food waste is responsible for at least 6 to 8% of the greenhouse gas in our atmosphere. So a number of years ago, California taking the lead in terms of climate change and pass a number of laws. These laws, at the core, what these laws are trying to do is divert organics from landfill. There are 2 laws in particular, AB 1826, that required mandatory commercial organics recycling. It started with a company that produced 8 cubic yards of waste per week. They ratcheted it down to 4 cubic yards. And recently, they ratcheted it down to 2 cubic yards per week. So there's mandatory organics recycling. And then SB 1383, which required 50% reduction in landfill organic waste by 2020, and 75% reduction in organic waste reduction by 2025. And these are compared to 2014 levels. And one of the things that makes our program so topical that these laws are in the books, but we're about a year away from where the state will start enforcing these laws, in particular SB 1383. So by January of 2022, there will be enforcement of these laws, because we're not, throughout the county and throughout the state, we're not meeting those targets. Genesis, are there any questions?
No, you're good to go.
Okay, good. All right, so our food waste program can help cities and businesses meet these organic diversion laws. And we're uniquely situated because we have a wastewater side, we have a solid waste side. On the right, you see our largest wastewater treatment plant. This is the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant in Carson. And these circular deals here are anaerobic digestion. So California law, food waste, if it's not going to landfill, then they want it either composted or anaerobically digested. And we have a lot of them. We have 24 anaerobic digesters. And the beauty of these things, they're sealed. All the gas that's generated in there is captured and cannot go into the atmosphere. So this is our largest treatment plant. And then on the left-hand side, this is the foundation of our solid waste management facility. This is a shot of our Pointed Hills material recovery facility, and it can handle up to 4,400 tons of refuse each day. And so we can gather waste here and recycle it or segregate it or process it and then bring it to our joint plant. So we already have existing infrastructure to do this organics diversion, food waste recycling required by the state. So let me break down our recycling program. We have 3 major steps. First, we have food waste. Source separated food waste is brought to the Pointed Hills MRF and it's processed. And
I'm sorry.
Pardon? Is there
I'm
a
sorry.
question, Jen?
Oh, there you go. No, we didn't see the slide. Now we do.
Okay, I'm sorry. So our food waste program has 3 steps. Source separated food waste is brought to our Pointed Hills MRF, and there it's processed into a smoothie or slurry, and we'll show you that in a second. And we'll step through that. And then the second step is then that slurry is brought to our plant in Carson and it's put in anaerobic digester and generates biogas, and that biogas is used to generate electricity and fuel and so on. And then the last step is the stuff out of the digester, we compost it, we turn it into soil amendment. But let's go through the first step, what happens to source separated food waste. So here you have source separated food waste. It may come from a grocery store or restaurant, a school, any kind of institution. We even have source separated food waste at our main, with food waste bins at our main office that have source separated food waste. So we collect source separated food waste. The hauler then brings it to our Pointed Hills MRF, Pointed Hills Material Recovery Facility. They weigh in here. It's about $70 a ton to bring in source separated food waste. But we also negotiate contracts that could be as much as $10 a ton lower than that. And then take a look at then you would drive in after you weigh, and this is driving into our Pointed Hills Material Recovery Facility. You can see on the left recyclables that we've pulled out of the waste. This is a fully enclosed building. It was built in 2004. It can fit like 3 jumbo jets in there, and it's basically set up to recycle. If we find a commodity in the waste that has value, we can orient our operation and pull it out. So when you can see recycled material being piled up to be sorted and recycled on the left, on the right is where we take the source separated food waste, and we're going to take a closer look and show how we start processing that. So here's a closer look at that shot on the right. At the Pointed Hills Material Recovery Facility, right now we're taking about 30 tons of food waste, source separated food waste, and it goes into this hopper, and then this hopper feeds into these 2 bioseparators, which are like huge garlic presses that squeezes the food waste through openings. And we'll show you a video of that. And then from there, that food waste is turned into a slurry and we store it in these tanks. So let's take a look at the videotape. So this is video taken the first day we opened this program a couple of years ago. This was the inaugural food waste in what we call our DOTA system. You see the loader dropping stuff into the hopper, and then the food waste will be pushed into this called bioseparator. And let me just pause it here for a second. So this is what, if you open up the door right here, this is what you would see. It's called a hammer mill, and Will is more of an expert on it. And the hopper feeds the food waste into this chamber that you see here opened up, and you can see these openings. And then these arms press the food waste through these openings. So just think of like a garlic press, how you squeeze garlic through the opening. So the food waste is coming through this way. And then the plastic and the inert material that we don't want, it stays inside. Just the same way you might have like the skin of the garlic staying inside the garlic press. And let me continue with this inaugural videotape. And so what we're doing, and so even source separated food waste has a lot of plastic in it. Not as much as regular trash, but much better. So every so often during the day, one of the operators has to clean out the bioseparator. So here's the hopper in motion. You can see the plastic bags. And you can see the plastic coming out of the bioseparator. And there are two sets of bioseparators. The second set has smaller openings. It's finer pieces of plastic get rejected, and that's what you see here. All this stuff, the plastics and so on, the inert material get landfill, and then you're left with the good stuff. This is what we want. Here's the food waste that has been slurried, turned into a smoothie type consistency. We mix it with water if we need to, but we need the right consistency. And then that food waste is, as I said earlier, is stored in these containers right here. And then from there,
Basil,
yes.
we have a raised hand from Lori. Hem?
Okay. Hi, Lori. You have a question, Lori?
Yes, I do. Okay, thank you so much. I really love the image. This really works. But so does the Puente Hills accepts only separated organics waste, or do you do any separation? Do you take any commingled waste and separates these waste at your, do you only take separated waste from the I guess you only take separated waste from the cities? Right.
So, and Will, you can chime in too. So we take, and Will Chen is one of the engineers that helped set this program up. So for this food waste program, we're looking for source separated food waste because just cleaning out those bioseparators becomes really time consuming if it's not source separated. But we're willing to, we take other kinds of waste that it may be commingling and separate. So I'm not, in terms of this food waste program, we're looking for source separated food waste.
Yeah, the DOTA machine, and good morning, everybody. The machine that we have installed here that you're seeing in front of you guys, this was designed really to take source separated, so it's pre-consumer. So it's primarily coming from restaurants, supermarkets of that nature, where there are larger, let's say cardboard or large plastic containers or bags that the machine can remove relatively easily. Now, there are machines out there and other facilities that are able to handle what we consider MSW, which is municipal solid waste. Obviously, in that waste stream, there is also an organic fraction, and a different type of technology would have to be implemented to be able to separate the much higher contamination rates that are inherent in that waste stream. But for our facility here, again, it was designed to take relatively clean feedstock, because if you started throwing in just basically your black bin material, there would be too much contamination that this machine really would not be able to efficiently remove in a timely manner.
So as we go, later on, I guess, as city starts implementing 1383, I'm sure you guys are going to be providing some guidance to waste haulers on on how clean or how clean the organic materials that you'd like. I see the plastics there, but I'm sure we're going to need some guidance on what to inform our residents or our commercial entities, or how clean the organic materials needs to be.
Right, right. And LA County sanitation districts, we don't necessarily control any waste. We work very closely with haulers, obviously, and we receive feedback from the industry. And that's always been a challenge, is the cleanliness of the waste stream. So, as 1383, as we start approaching that enforcement date, there was a question from the forum asking, why don't we enforce starting 2021? Well, there's a lot of momentum that needs to kind of move in the right direction, including starting from drafting the law for it to get accepted by the OAL, Office of Administrative Law, and then the actual enforcement. So in order for cities to really comply, there's a lot of work that needs to go into this. So meaning, if haulers then need to have some sort of clean waste stream, do we separate, have a separate bin for people to throw their food waste in? Other jurisdictions have actually experimented with having their organic fraction or food waste dumped directly into your green bin. And then that receiving location then has the equipment available and able to handle that material. But it's really, there's no recipe right now or magic, equation. Everyone's trying to figure this out as well. And obviously, you hit the nail on the head. The cleanliness is going to be a challenge.
But Will, Habib Karat is our engineer in charge of the MRF. We're willing to work with you, and if there's a path forward that helps the cities, the whole purpose of this program, because the mayors of the respective cities sit on our board of directors. So the whole purpose of this program is to help our member cities comply. So if we don't have it on the menu right now, we're willing to figure out it. We're willing to work with you, see if there's stuff we can do to tweak our system. And we're always doing that at the material recovery facility. If you come up with a way to collect that food waste, maybe in plastic bags, we could look to see if we can modify the system. So it's a dialogue. We're here to basically help the member cities. So we don't want to say it can't be done. Bring us the idea, Will and a bunch of smart engineers will figure out how to make it happen cost effectively. All right, so this food waste the slurry is then pumped into tanker trucks. And if we went before the pandemic, you would get a tour to see this facility. We drive into this fully enclosed facility, and you can see vehicles coming in. One of the beauties of this facility, it's pretty quick ingress, egress. You don't have to wait in line. But here the tanker truck is loading up the slurry. And then it's taken to our joint water pollution control plant in Carson. And we have 4 receiving stations that were recently built. So they offload the slurry into these tanks. And what happens is then the slurry is then fed into what we call our anaerobic digester. You see a little bit of one of our 24 there. So this is where the second part of the process occurs. Anaerobic digestion of this food waste generates biogas that we use for energy fuel. So here's an aerial of our anaerobic digesters at our joint water pollution control plant. This facility is right at off the 110 freeway at Sepulveda in the city of Carson. It's been there in some capacity since 1928. And here's the digester. It's oxygen-free environment. Microorganisms feed on this organic material, and they give off a biogas, which is mainly methane and CO2. About 15, 16 days in there. And I'm going to give you, so here's the top roughly third of this digester. Here's what it looks like inside. These things are huge. Here's a 6-foot board right here. So this thing is about 10 feet above ground, another 40 or 30 feet below ground. And in here, we take the wastewater solids, because it's still at its core, it's a wastewater treatment plant. So the solids that are removed from wastewater are mixed with the food waste, and it's digested by these microorganisms, giving off this methane and CO2. And then that biogas then basically is sent to jet engines. This is one of the engines at our joint plant in Carson, and these generate power. Here's our power plant there, what we call the total energy facility. And And so it generates power from the jet engine, and then the heat exhaust also generates steam. And so this whole power plant generates about 20 megawatts of energy. And most of this power is used to run the joint plant, that wastewater treatment plant. And it runs 95% of the time on this biogas, and it saves us about $18 million a year in terms of deferred energy costs. Well, what's happening is we get more and more food waste into our system. We're generating more power than the plant might need. And what we've recently done is that surplus gas. So as we get more and more food waste coming into our Point of Hills material recovery facility, and right now that facility takes about 30 tons of food waste a day, but it could take up to 165. As we get more food waste there, we get more slurry, we get more gas. And so we're generating more gas than we could use to power the wastewater treatment plant. So what Will and all the other folks in the energy group have done is that here's one of our digesters. They've connected a pipeline from the digester, and we will show you that. And you can see the cutout of where this underground biogas pipeline has been laid, and it goes to an existing fueling station. And we have a fueling station at the intersection of Sepulveda and Figueroa. So here's the connection between the digester, and what you're looking at here is our new biogas conditioning facility, where we're cleaning up that biogas so it becomes vehicle grade fuel. It's stored right here, and here's the existing fueling station. Prior to a month ago, this fueling station, compressed natural gas fueling station, completely ran on natural gas that came from the gas company. Now it's completely being fueled by food waste, biogas produced by food waste about 2 weeks ago. So let's come down to ground level. Here's your biogas conditioning system. And what it does, the biogas comes in, you remove moisture, you move other contaminants, it gets forced through a number of membranes, and then you have this compressed renewable natural gas. So we go from like about 62% methane to, after the whole conditioning system, to having about 90% methane. And we store it in these tankers. And then it goes to the fueling station right next door, and it's open to the public, to anyone with a compressed natural gas vehicle can go there and fuel up. And then the last step is some of the remnants of what's in the anaerobic digesters, the what we call biosolids. And we try to recycle that too, because our mantra is converting waste into resources. Here's the digested solid. This is the building where the stuff that's left over in the digester, the anaerobic digester, gets dewatered because there's a very high water concentration even after 15, 16 days. But we put them through what we call a centrifuge, and it goes from about 3% solid to about 30% solid. We removed a lot of the water so we don't have to truck so much biosolids off. And we produce this biosolids cake. We call it a cake because it looks like crumbled chocolate cake. And this is at the joint plant in Carson, what the biosolids look like. We then truck that off site, and we take it to a number of reuse facilities. We land apply it directly, or we compost it, use a soil amendment. And so here's the biosolids after it's been mixed with agricultural waste, ag waste, and we create this compost that we sell, or it's used on local farms. So what are we doing now? Where are we at the joint plant? So there are two numbers to remember. At the Point of Hills Material Recovery Facility, we're processing about 30 tons of source separated food waste a day. That facility can handle up to about 165 tons per day of source separated food waste. And at the joint plant in Carson, we're processing about 300 tons of that food waste slurry. And this shows you kind of from startup to where we're at. We're about 300, 350 tons per day of that food waste slurry after we created the smoothie. And you can see it continues to go up. And in addition to the food waste that comes from the Point of Hills MRF, we have a number of other haulers that have been bringing their food waste straight to the plant in Carson. And this facility, with our digesters, we can handle up to 600 tons per day of this food waste slurry. And we're starting to creep up. We're starting to ramp up to that 600 tons per day. Right now, we're producing about the equivalent of 2,000 gallons of gasoline in terms of power. And when we maximize or max out our system, we should get to the equivalent of about 5,700 gallons of gasoline, energy equivalent, produced from this food waste. Our goal is to max out the system, and we're well on our way. And as we generate more gas, more energy, we'll still use it for electricity. We'll still use it to fuel a vehicle. And then we're exploring whether we can put some of that into a natural gas pipeline. But that's the extent of our food waste recycling program, food system. Any questions?
Yeah, we have a few questions. Actually, we have a hand raised.
Okay, great.
Not anymore, actually. Okay, so our first question is, why can't we mix green waste material from green bins and mix it with food waste to process this way?
That's a Will question.
Well, where we're taking our material, it's going to the joint plan, and imagine that it's a large kind of stomach, and if we were to take primarily twigs and branches and wood, it really wouldn't digest quickly enough. Again, these digesters are designed originally to take wastewater, normal wastewater sludge, and all that stuff really has to be digested within about 15 days, and that's what we refer to as our hydraulic retention time. So in order for any of our customers to bring slurry to our facility, we have a slurry specification, and there's about 30 to 40 different parameters that it has to meet. So if we were to, let's say, have a new potential customer, if they can prove that their slurry that they produce can meet our specification, then that would mean that it's acceptable to those digesters without really messing anything up biologically speaking. And then that would be okay. Not to say that we can't mix green waste with food waste, but again, we have to make sure that the specifications are met before we introduce any of that material into the digesters.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, we have a hand raised. Let's see. Lori, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. So you're saying that you guys are producing the biosolids cake. Who are your customers right now on those biosolids cake? Is there compost? We use as compost?
So we have about at any one time we have 6 or 7 locations where we take the biosolids produced from the digesters. Are we still there?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 6 or 7 locations. Our big location, we have a facility in Rancho Cucamonga that we partnered with Inland Empire Utility District, where they also bring their biosolids, and we create soil amendment there. We also have a facility in Kings County called Tulare Lake Compost, where we create compost, and that's used as a soil amendment on local farms out there. We work with Synagro. And then we have a location in Arizona where it's land applied, the biosolids. But we have about 6 or 7 locations. Most of them, the biggest locations are where it's composted with some kind of agricultural waste and to create a soil amendment. And then we sell it to farmers or utilize it on land that we own to grow crops, if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So our next question is, why 2022 to enforce SB 1383?
Before Will gets into it, it's a state law. I'm not sure why they picked 2022. We're just here to help, I think. Anything you would add, Will?
They thought isn't it 2021 is what the question.
When enforcement kick in?
Power Recycle just came out and said that enforcement would start January 1st, 2022.
Oh, so it's 2021, 2022. Yeah, 2022. All right.
Okay, and I think those are all the questions we have for now. Unless someone else had any other questions?
Yeah, and I guess if there are no, the thing I would add is that
We have a few.
the, pardon?
Oh, we have a couple of raised hands now.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Corallo, would you like to ask your question? Corallo, okay. If not, we'll go to.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, good morning, guys. Great presentation so far. I do appreciate you guys' time as well.
Thank you.
We are very informative. We do more construction-based products here for our manufacturing fabrication of installation products. I know this is more driven towards food waste, and it's great. Do we look in the future of hopefully doing something with these type of materials? Because I know they go to our landfills. We got different styro, mineral wool, you name it, foam glass, which got different chemicals in it. Is that something you guys think in the future will kind of, dissect into looking into recycling programs for going green?
It's just so we have additional recycling programs at the Pointed Hills Material Recovery Facility. We also have a new automated sorting line. So part of the recycling equation or landscape is China is where most of the recycled material has been going. But over the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, China has really become really strict about the purity of the recycled material that's shipped back over to them. So in January of this year, January of this year, we've started up a new automated sorting line that's 4 times faster than what we had before. And the purity level is much higher in hopes, and so in hopes of getting stuff into the overseas recycling market. And also, again, helping our member city in California meet these state recycling requirements. So we do plastic recycling, cardboard recycling, glass recycling. We do all that as well. We just today we wanted to focus on the food waste recycling.
Oh, no, great. I appreciate your response.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our next question, can we bring in food waste in return to get free compost?
We've had that question before. I'll let Will.
I don't remember answering that question, but I mean, we would gladly take your food waste. I don't know actually how the composting would work. Technically, you kind of saw our operation. The cake is loaded directly into these transport trucks that are taken out to our end location. So I don't think that we have any programs that I'm aware of where it's actually taken away for direct residential use. I know that there are different classifications, for example, for fertilizer, whether it's class A or class B. I'm not sure if we actually have a program like that, but that's a great question. Maybe we can get back to you on that.
Yeah, I mean, what I do know is the facility in Rancho Cucamonga, Inland Empire facility, you can reach out to them, and from time to time, they may have a program where residents can get compost, bags of compost. It's like when you're trying to promote a new item. So I'm not sure what they're doing right now, but we could get back to you and give you the contact information for the Inland Empire Utility District facility, because the one in Kings County, obviously, or Tulare Lake in Kings County is just way too far. I would say if you're looking for compost, the best place or soil amendment would be the one in Rancho Cucamonga.
Great. And so our next question, actually, we have a hand raised.
Yeah, just a quick question. So I don't know, have you guys done a presentation before the Lara group? Actually, this is actually really informative. And the second question is, knowing that by January 1st, 2022, we need to have, cities have to have something in place to collect food waste. Have you done some calculations on how much food waste is going to be produced or generated in LA County, and how much of that your facilities will be able to I guess, accept?
You want to try that one, Will, or you want me to start off?
Well, our magic number was the 4,000, right? I know we have somewhere in maybe the waste characterization study that DPW, Department of Public Works, publishes, but our current facilities right now at what you saw, the material recovery facility where we can take source separated food waste, that system has a capacity of about 165 tons per day. So that's the actual raw food waste that we can actually process. Now on the joint plant side, once it's already slurrified, so in a slurry form and it meets our specification, right now our tentative target or capacity is about 600 slurry tons. Again, we're only at about half of that capacity, so we're about halfway there. But yeah, that facility can take up to 600 slurry tons.
And in terms of the LARA group, we would love to give a presentation to the LARA group. If you could, we could reach out to you and find out who we should talk to give a presentation in terms of the LARA group. And I think the county-wide numbers at 4,000, conservatively, there should be about 4,000 tons of food waste out there in LA County, because we're probably producing even more than 4,000, but we use that as extremely conservative low number. But yeah, I would think there's probably 4,000 tons of food waste that's going to need a home pretty quickly come January 1st, 2022.
Right. So I'll coordinate with you on the presentation with Lara.
Okay, thank you.
And it's usually recorded with the City of LA as well, as part of our group.
Okay.
I mean, I like this virtual tour. It's actually very informative. It's a good way for us to understand what's going on with these, organic food waste. So really appreciate it. Very informative.
We're just disappointed we can't give you the smell.
Oh my God. Yeah, you need to somehow work that in your.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so our next question is, do you see the system being able to handle post-consumer food waste, like from residences where contamination is higher?
Well, for right now, again, the DOTA machine may be able to handle higher contamination rates, but again, that's going to really throttle down the throughput. Again, we're trying to target where the market is headed. That's not to say that we might not have the infrastructure set up to be able to handle that. And I know that there are other facilities kind of working towards that. But as of right now, again, really the feedstocks that we're able to accept at our two facilities are source separated pre-consumer food waste and also the slurry. So, I think it might be time for maybe us to ask Habib too, is if there's going to be a separate waste stream that we can take pre-consumer direct residential food waste and how we can integrate that into our portfolio. But, I know as of right now, the operators for the DOTA machine, as you saw, and I think there was a question earlier, there's a lot of plastic bags and contamination and all that stuff you can imagine as that hammer mill is kind of spinning around. Especially large pieces of plastic film that don't break up very easily. We have to go down every couple of hours, depending on the contamination, take out the doors, de-energize the system for safety, and literally just kind of go in and cut with a knife or scissors to remove that, plastic film or anything that might get caught. So you can imagine as you start throwing more and more trash in there, those 13 millimeter size pores, and then in the second stage, 8 millimeter size pores can get clogged up relatively easily. And as the system runs inefficiently, then you start passing through a lot more of that organic waste and it's not as clean on the other side. So again, there's all these design parameters that we have to take into consideration to make sure that that machine's running as optimally as it can.
Thank you, Will. You just answered another question that we had on there. So the next question is, what about certified compostable foodware? Do you take it?
So I don't think that we necessarily say we don't or do. I just know that, when oftentimes you see something that's compostable, like a compostable fork or a compostable cup or, to go packaged orders, Yes, technically they are compostable, but again, like I mentioned earlier, if we wanted to accept that into our system, such as the anaerobic digesters, again, that biomaterial really needs to be readily digestible and readily able to be broken down. So you can imagine if you were to just leave that compostable, quote unquote, utensil, it's going to take a very, very long time for it to actually break down. And, although it might be faster in the digesters, it doesn't break down readily quick enough for us to basically put it in, and then 14 or 15 days later, it goes through our process and becomes, Class B fertilizer. But I know for a fact that that is kind of, mixed into food waste. And you can imagine that if there is a food-based bin or a food waste bin at your restaurant or, school or whatever, that's probably going to get thrown into that waste basket. And if that basket ends up going to our facility, which is considered source separated, it will be ground up into smaller pieces. And some of it's going to be, separated out. Some of it's going to be continuing on to the organic fraction and get sent to our treatment plant as well. So again, I think that's kind of there's a razor edge thin line there. Technically, it is compostable, but not as quickly as our systems would like.
So next question, a little long. This appears to be circular economic approach, where pre-consumer food waste and biosolids are used to generate electricity, vehicle fuel, and soil amendments, the latter which are used to grow more food for human consumption, which then goes back through the cycle. Great system. What are the considerations pertaining to PFAS and other forever chemicals and microplastics from the wastewater systems that end up in the soil amendments and ultimately in our food?
That's a good.
So
I think. Go ahead, Will.
that we're our other sections in our wastewater management department, we're actively tracking PFAS and PFOA. And I know that we actually had staff directly working on this, tracking that, and it is of concern, whether it's in our wastewater treatment system that makes it into our soil amendments or in our drinking water supply. So there are working groups that are actively tracking this. From a food waste perspective, again, what we're doing right now is, grinding up into much larger pieces. So I don't know if we're necessarily creating any PFOA or PFAS, but on the wastewater side, that's something that I know that they're definitely kind of keeping an eye on and making sure that there are processes to make sure that, the levels are safe. Do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I think we're researching it. As Will said, we have a group that's looking at it. What I would say about PFO and PFAS is we don't create it. It's out there, but we are researching it to see what's going on. I don't see it as an issue I hope it's in our food waste per se. And we're looking to see, and what happens, it's ubiquitous, the stuff that's water resistant, clothing or whatever, and we're trying to see what it means for us in terms of, but we don't see it as an issue right now. And in terms of microplastic, again, most of that stuff gets settled out in our treatment process. So, but the PFOA, PFAS, we're looking at that in terms of the full ramifications. We haven't seen it as an issue in our biosolids at this point, but we're looking at it because the levels keep changing. We're now at 14 parts per trillion, I think. So we're researching it and looking at that. So, but I think I think we can't lose sight of the fact that food waste has to be diverted from landfills, and there are two options that I think the state's laid out. One is compost it, other is anaerobic digestion, and that train's left the station, is my understanding. We have to do something about getting food waste out of landfill.
Thank you. So our next question is, what would you recommend on the approach that schools can take in getting rid of food waste?
I think work with Habib or Will, but I think it's creating, just like a restaurant, a bin where you would have source separated food waste. And then it's just a simple thing of the hauler bringing it to a facility like us, and it now is taken out of a landfill and it becomes a resource in terms of energy and the biosolids or compost.
Yeah, that resonates. Definitely a lot of feedback that we've been receiving is that there's definitely an interest from the school perspective, because I understand that there is quite a bit of food waste generated at campuses and schools as well. But yeah, I would definitely, the first step would be reach out to see where the haulers are and who's contracted to collect the waste from those campuses and go from there. And whether or not they would require a separate bin that's collecting food waste or where it's going. And I think that's definitely the first step to see where it's going. I know that there are also a lot of food rescue programs that are very active, especially in Los Angeles, that try to give food, I guess, a second chance, within a certain freshness period or window. So there's a lot of programs and a lot of movement in this space. And I want to touch up on one of the earlier questions from Quick Rollo, which is, are we targeting a recycling for other waste streams? Now, the reason why Cal Recycle is really targeting organics out of landfills is to target short-lived climate pollutants. And where this is getting it as, if the food waste or this organic material goes into our landfills, even well-managed landfills, there's still going to be a little bit of methane that is emitted into the atmosphere. And once that methane gets into the atmosphere, it's very detrimental to, the environment. And that, in comparison to, let's say you put some C&D or construction and debris waste into the landfill, that doesn't necessarily get converted into methane that is ultimately going out into the atmosphere. So they're kind of targeting and trying to figure out what's the most detrimental first and going from there first and kind of going down the list. But, they're definitely targeting this methane as an emission source and cutting that down.
And can I add something also? We're just talking a little aspect of what we do at the sanitation districts, and we're not, the food waste recycling program is great, but we also, and Genesis, you can chime in because you might have the dates and numbers better. We've been partnering with a program called Grades of Green, and they've been going into schools for, I don't know, I want to say 10 years. We've funded them, we've used our staff. And what they've done is they set up a program to educate schools and kids about almost generating zero waste. The schools will compete against each other and they learn techniques to avoid the food waste and minimize waste. And at the end of the school year, when you're in school, when went to school, they would compete to see who reduced their waste the most. And so that's something that even predates this program. Genesis, do you have anything to add on the Grades of Green program or
happening since 2007?
2007?
And
If you're not familiar, it's a wonderful program. It was started by a number of women, seeing that there was looking ahead, seeing this need, and we've been partnering with them since 2007, where we go in, we educate school kids in schools on how to avoid throwing that food waste or waste into the trash.
Yeah, and it's an organization that kind of works worldwide, and so it's pretty cool to, see the schools competing with kids from other countries, and then at the end of the year, there's kind of like a big, like, event for the winner. Yeah,
Pre-pandemic, the kids would, yeah.
For the winner, for the school winners, and everyone's involved, and it's been a really great program, and they've been very involved in LA County. They're based in LA County. So.
And if any, we can provide information on that. I mean, if your schools are not familiar with it, I highly recommend that they become aware, and it's a really good informative program for the kids and the schools.
Yeah, I will post a link in the chat. And then also once a year, they, like, I think for their first kickoff meeting, the kids come to our
we would give
a tour of the Fuente Hills Materials Recovery Facility and our wastewater facility.
And this year, unfortunately, we had to do it virtually.
Yeah. Okay, so I will type it in the chat. It's gradesofgreen.org. Perfect. And I think those are all the questions that we have for today. Oh, and then my colleague just wanted to know, Grades of Green has inspired over 600,000 students in 47 states and 27 countries.
Okay, great.
That's a fun fact. But anyway, those are all of our questions. If you think of any other question after, please feel free to email any of us. I can put our website down in the chat as well if you think of any other questions after, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
And if they have source separated food waste, they want to know what the specifications are for the material recovery facility. Reach out to Habib Karat. And if it's the slurry, your man who can tell you the perfect recipe for your slurry is Will Chen. You know, so. And then thank you for spending a Thursday morning with us. And like I said, hopefully next year we can have you drive around the facility so we all can get that fine bouquet of food waste.
And then one other thing, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube. And so I'm going to link our YouTube channel on here as well, so that you guys can check it out. Or if you want us to do a separate presentation for your group, please feel free to reach out to us and we'd be more than happy. For future tours, we also post a lot on social media and we keep everyone up to date. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube as well.
Yeah, and if you know of any organization or individual who could benefit from seeing us giving this tour, to reiterate what Genesis said, please just reach out to us and we'd be glad to give them a brief presentation on this program.
And with that, that is it. I think that's it. We just have a lot of thank yous. So thank you, Basil and Will.
And Genesis, thank you.
And thank you all for
Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care. Have a great day.
Bye.